At the beginning of this conversation, I talked about testing and having variability in the scores. There are some people where they will be performing average in one range and they'll be performing high in another range, or they'll be performing low in even if another range. When we see those types of patterns, and we call that variability, we need to look at each of those scores and look at what that means for that individual. So if you get a solidly average performance, meaning there's not much variability or not any variability in all of those subdomains, processing speed, working memory, verbal, or perceptual, you will get an FSIQ score. FSIQ stands for Full Scale Intelligence Quotient. That will also probably fall in the average range. And that means we think that you are performing as expected given your age, ethnicity, and socioeconomic status when compared to everyone else that is your same age, same ethnicity, same socioeconomic status, etc. If a person gets a high score on, let's say, verbal and a low score on perceptual and average scores on processing speed and working memory, now we have some variability, and that variability will render that FSIQ, or Full Scale Intelligence Quotient, uninterpretable. And even if we can generate a number, that number is irrelevant because of the variability in the testing. So we have to look at those different scores. So for the high performance, does that mean that this person just blew it out of the park? It could mean that. It could mean that this is a strength that this person is naturally given the ability to, perform high. But let's say we look at those scores even closer. You might find that there's only one subtest that is actually elevated and other subtests that are lower. So the astute clinician or assessor is not going to just look at the index score and say, oh, well, you're average, so great. We're going to look at all of the elevations. We're going to look at all of those individual scores and really understand what's happening, because many of those scores don't necessarily occur what we call naturally. Many people tend to fall in a particular range, but if something is elevated, there might only be a small number of folks who have those elevations. So we really want to understand what that elevation means. An elevation in vocabulary might mean that a person is really well versed at defining words and have a very broad vocabulary. But if they have trouble with conceptual reasoning, conceptual understanding, that broad vocabulary is not going to help them make sense of some of the things that they're talking about in a conceptual way. It will help them to define things. They will know words on a concrete level, but they might not really be able to, what we say is conceptualize in ways that are reflective of someone who has these high scores. And when I say conceptual, I mean thinking about things symbolically. So if that conceptual reasoning is impaired, but that vocabulary is really high, you'll have someone who is well-versed at communication, but they might not be able to see the bigger picture or see things in a way that is beyond the concrete.